Hey, welcome to AP Psychology. This is Mr. Shanahan. This session will be on the free response question. I'm really surprised I haven't already added this to my program already, or my channel, I should say. But here we go. So, there. Why the essay? It's not enough simply to know psychology. You should also be able to communicate your knowledge effectively and efficiently. Being able to answer 100 multiple choice questions is an honorable accomplishment, but writing successful essays on the AP Psychology exam can confirm that you have sufficient knowledge of the introductory psychology course. Uh, Facts about the free response question. The free response question in a normal year is worth 1/3 of the score for the AP Psychology exam and is comprised of 2 essay questions. Writing an essay for the psychology exam is a different exercise than writing an essay for an English exam. You're not going to have to do all that introduction and things like that. The basic fundamentals of writing still do persist. You still have to write in sentences. You have to write a good paragraph. You have to use sentence structure. It's important to demonstrate your competency in psychology. You have to sound like an educated individual. A 5-paragraph essay format with sophisticated introductions, conclusions, and transition is not necessary to answering the AP Psychology exam. What you want to do is be able to demonstrate that you know the content, not necessarily that you can write about it in a creative way. So typically you have 50 minutes to answer both of the following questions. It's not enough to answer the question by merely listing facts. You should present a cogent argument based on your critical analysis of the questions posed using appropriate psychology terminology. So this is why we have spent so much time over the course of the year studying not only the case studies, but also the terms that we use. The vocabulary quizzes we've had throughout the year are intended to give you a good, solid grasp of the terms used in psychology, and hopefully this will be to your benefit. Back in 2008, the AP exam free response question, we conducted We conducted a variation of Ash's 1951 conformity study in which participants made judgments about the length of lines. We randomly assigned participants to one of 2 conditions and told them that the study involved perceptual abilities. In the first condition, participants estimated the length of lines after hearing 5 people pretending to be participants. They were also known as Confederates. Give inaccurate estimates. In the second condition, participants estimated the length of lines without hearing estimates of Confederates. As we expected, participants in the first condition were less accurate in their estimates of the line length, demonstrating the tendency to conform to majority influence. So A, how would each element be related to the specific content of the experiment reported in the abstract? So then write about the control group, the deception, the operational definition of the dependent variable, and the hypothesis. Debriefing, how might a participant's estimates of line length in the study be related to the following: cognitive dissonance and Maslow's hierarchy of needs? So in this, what you will do is refer to the control group and what the role of the control group in this portion is. So you would define a control group, and then you would explain how the control group applies to this paragraph here. Further, you would write about the deception. You would define that, and then you would apply it to how the deception was used in the paragraph. So you would write this out in a complete sentence form, defining deception and then explaining what deception is by applying it to this. If you do not apply, it will not count. Here again, the operational definition of the dependent variable. You need to identify the operational definition, define what an operational definition is, and explain it up in how it applies to the paragraph. And then finally, the hypothesis. Here again, what is a hypothesis? Define a hypothesis, and then apply it to the paragraph above. Then you go on to answer 2. Now, one more thing I would like to say is you want to make sure that when you do your definition, you're going to write the control group, and then you're going to underline the words control group. What happens is that when the examiner is going through here, he's looking for these terms. He's not necessarily reading it with any detail. That's why that 5-paragraph essay isn't necessarily so important. But he is looking for these terms. And then you underline that so he can find the control group, he can see your definition, and then your application. Okay, so moving on. How might participants estimate the length of the study be related to the following? You would write about cognitive dissonance, and then define it. What is cognitive dissonance? And then you apply it to this paragraph up here. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You would define Maslow's hierarchy of needs and apply it to the paragraph. So tips for writing the answers to the free response question are based on the scoring guidelines provided by the College Board. The AP questions have gotten more complicated over the years. Many have included either research methods or statistic type questions. 93, 94, 95, 96, 98, 99, 2000, 2003, 4, 6, and etc. The 2 most common questions were methods and stats related, or questions that have central concept with many diverse vocabulary words related to it. Recently, they've added a 3rd type of essay, the persuasive free response. So prepared for that as well. You do not need an introductory paragraph. You do not need a concluding paragraph. You do not need to write an essay. Answer the question in the order it is asked. Do not jump around. Okay? Pretend the person grading your response has no clue. Pretend you're teaching it to you're writing about it to one of your friends who hasn't had psychology, so they don't know what you're talking about. Do not use slang, though. You are talking, in other words, the individual knows nothing about psychology, has never taken it, etc. Don't expect that person reading your response to fill in the blanks. In the information you provide, it must be clear that you understand everything about the topic the question is requiring you to answer. Pretend it's your mom or dad or your grandparents, somebody like that, where you have to use appropriate language, you have to sound like you're intelligent, and because this is supposed to be a college essay, okay? Slang and abbreviations are not acceptable unless it's you're explain what your abbreviation is. Define all psychological terms, even if it doesn't ask for it. Remember, our reader is clueless. That's not true. These are actually high school AP teachers and college professors. Give an extra example when you write a definition. Sometimes that example will score you the point even though your definition is incorrect. Okay, so define and apply. Oftentimes, students will get the definition incorrect, but they will understand the concept and will be able to apply it appropriately. So you can still score the point that way, depending on the question. All right, so remember, the important factor is you're writing as if the person knows nothing about psychology, and you need to write it in an educated, clear response using proper terminology. Make each definition or application part of the separate sentence and do not combine them. Make each definition or application part of the separate sentence. Do not combine them. So don't mix your definitions and your applications. Make each one separate. Use at least 2 or 3 sentences for each one. Underline the main term in your essay as you write so that your reader can find them. So as I said, 2 to 3 sentences on each term and definition. Write it so that the reader can find them, and you do that in a way you underline the term that you're defining. All right, remember, we write free responses, not essays. Make your definitions and applications specific. This is how important this is. You don't ever write something like positive reinforcement is when you give somebody something after they do something and they're more likely to do that thing in the future. No pronouns or generic words. No somebody or this thing or stuff. Use actual, real examples of people, animals, behaviors, psych terms, etc. Remember, you're an expert explaining this to someone who's not. Back up your information with facts from the books and studies that you've read about, the documentaries you've seen. If the question asks you for your opinion, back up your claim with the research and facts. The readers want to know that you have learned information in the textbook. So I've given you all these case studies to read, and this is why I had you do it. So you would be able to back up your commentary. Plan before you begin to answer the question. Take 1 minute to pre-write, underline key phrases, etc. Making a brief outline helps most people. Make sure you answer all parts of the question. Don't leave anything out. This is why you're allowed to write in the book, so you can do your underlining, your highlighting kind of thing where you can outline what you're going to say and what key points you want to mention. Okay, like while you're reading it, if you think it's the Asch study, you want to write down the Asch study and what you remember about that. Also, this is really important. Make sure you bring at least 2 blue or black ink pens. Bring 2, all right, to write with. You should also have at least 4 sharpened pencils, okay? And these are all useful for you in case you have a problem with your writing utensil during the exam. Not to mention, there's always someone who forgets to bring a pen. This is important to do this. For your answer, use complete sentences, not an outline. Grammar does not count, but the reader needs to understand what you're saying. Also, the reader needs to be able to read your handwriting. If you're one of those people that writes like a psychopath, write like a big psychopath, okay? Because when the words are small, they're hard to read. So write larger if you have bad handwriting. It's best for you to try to print if you have bad handwriting and to write as large as possible, where you still have the space. Also, watch your language, no profanity. Also, grammar may not count, but you are supposed to be writing a college essay. So don't use slang or familiar type language, okay? Check off next to each part of the question as you cover it to make sure that you've covered each important element. Check off for definitions, application, or whatever it is asked for. All correct answers score. Incorrect answers are ignored. All right, so if you define one of the terms correctly and apply it correctly, you score that point. But the next one you may not be aware of, or you may do it incorrectly. That one does not score. So you get, if there's a total of 8 points and you miss one, you get 7 points. You don't get points deducted. Okay, you can only score the point. So if a student says dopamine is the cause of schizophrenia and then immediately says that less dopamine causes schizophrenia, you get no point because you've directly contradicted yourself. Okay, so you can't do that. Remember, however you spend your time discussing ideas that are incorrect, omitting accurate responses, you will lose points as your response will not contain the readers are expecting an accurate response to contain. All right, so remember, this is what you need to know. To write an accurate free response is TDA. T equals term. Use the terms in the essay. Never assume the reader knows. Talk like a psychologist. Write like a psychologist. D, define. Define the term, even if it says it doesn't score, because it provides context. D equals define. And when you define, make sure you underline the word that you are defining. This helps the reader. Once again, define, and then finally apply. A equals apply. Apply the term to the scenario correctly. So define and apply, and I would add U to this for underline. Define, apply, and underline the term. Okay, you don't have to underline the entire thing because that would be nothing but lines on your page. What you need to do is underline the term. Okay, so this has been a quick overview of what's expected on the AP Psychology Free Response. And I hope this has been helpful, and good luck on the exam.